Maryland football needs to go after Mansoor Delane.
You are Locked On Terps, your daily podcast on the Maryland Terps, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
What's up, everyone? I'm Trey Moore, host of Locked On Terps, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. So thank you for making us part of your day. And I'm also doing work at InsideBlackandGold.net. So make sure you guys head over to InsideBlackandGold.net for all your latest Terps news. And today's episode is brought to you by the Gametime app. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. I think Maryland football needs to go after Mansoor Delane, the transfer cornerback from Virginia Tech. I think is the perfect guy for Maryland football to get in the portal this year. So as you guys know, this year, our secondary was awful. It was awful the entire year. We didn't have enough experience. We didn't have enough guys. We didn't have enough football players that were solid Big Ten guys. And we got thrown all over the entire year. And that, along with our offensive line, was by far our two biggest problems so far this year. We got thrown on by quarterbacks that I didn't even think were that good. Mediocre guys like Aiden Childs at Michigan State. I thought he had a decent year. He threw for 363 yards against us. A big part of that was because of our poor secondary. Indiana's Curtis Rourke, who's going to be playing in the playoff. They definitely have a good team, but he threw for 359 and 3 touchdowns against us. Even teams that couldn't really throw the ball, like I looked at Northwestern's numbers the entire year, they were able to throw the ball against us. When we played Minnesota, Max Brosmer went absolutely crazy against us, throwing for 320 yards, 4 touchdowns, and the list goes on. That doesn't even include some of the top teams that we play, like Oregon and Penn State. Even Rutgers, they were incredibly efficient throwing the ball against us, 238 yards and 2 touchdowns. When it came to it, when we needed to get off the field on third downs, when we needed our secondary to make a play or two in a game, they often just couldn't do it for a lot of the season, and it really hurt us. And our defensive line wasn't good enough to make up for it. But you can't just depend on the defensive line for everything. Eventually, you're going to need some guys that can hold up in the back end, especially with some of the talent you play in the Big Ten. I feel like the Big Ten continues to get less what it normally is. I still say you got to have the guys up front. You got to have guys on the offensive and defensive line, but it's less about just running the football anymore these days. You have some teams, especially some of the teams that came in that love to throw the ball, and you need good DBs. I just think whatever program you're at, you need good DBs, and it's a really tough position to find high-level ones. But Maryland has a chance to go after Mansoor Delane, who I think is one of the best corners in the entire portal. He's a really high-level kid from Virginia Tech, and there's a couple different reasons why I think Maryland should go after Mansoor Delane, why I think he's a really good fit for the Terps. I think, for one, this kid is a really talented player. Really good player. At the end of the day, we need some actual talent, and Mansoor Delane gives us that opportunity. He went absolutely crazy his first year at Virginia Tech as a freshman. Surprised a lot of people, earning freshman All-American and all those different things, and won a couple of awards. And a lot of people thought he was the next huge thing, kind of for Virginia Tech football, thought he was the next big-time corner, and he still has a chance to be able to do that. In 2022, his freshman year, he had 8 pass deflections, had an interception, and 2 forced fumbles. Definitely a pretty big-time year from Mansoor Delane. And so I think when we look at him, he was a freshman All-American 2022. He definitely hasn't. I was reading a couple articles because I don't watch Virginia Tech play football every single day, but he definitely, I don't want to say he's gotten worse since that season, but he definitely probably hasn't taken quite the jump up that they've wanted him to see, but he's still been a really good player. Last year, 7 passes defended, and then 4 interceptions. So he definitely had a pretty high level year last year for Virginia Tech. And I think he's a guy that we absolutely could make a really good fit for at Maryland. Now, I know here's the one thing that I want to talk about. Ohio State is definitely going to be in on this kid, but I say come here. And there's a reason why. His brother actually just committed to Ohio State. His brother was actually in the 2025 class. His brother's Delane, who was one of the top players in that class at the safety position. I don't know if you guys remember, we talked about him a while ago. We actually really wanted Maryland to be able to get this kid. I thought like maybe we would have a shot, but Ohio State ended up getting him. He's a top 100 player in that class, a top player in the 247 composite ratings, one of the top safeties in the 2025 class. And so his brother's actually committed to Ohio State. So a lot of people think Mansoor could end up going to Ohio State, but Ohio State's got some guys on the outside, and they've recruited at a really high level. And don't get me wrong, Fahim Delane, or excuse me, Mansoor Delane, not his brother. Mansoor Delane's a really good player, but if he goes to Maryland, he's guaranteed to be a starter, to be a really good player on the outside. Whereas if he goes to Ohio State, yeah, they have some openings. Like they lose Denzel Burke next year, who's a really talented corner. But one of their corners could be back next year. And so they have a lot of guys down the line at that corner position that are really highly recruited and stuff like that. And I think it's less of a guaranteed to play, but I think he's a really good fit. And I think Michael Locksley should absolutely go after this kid, Mansoor Delane, because another reason why I just said it, it's our biggest weakness on the team. It's scary how much of a weakness it is this year. And Maryland's already handing out a bunch of offers to a bunch of different guys at that spot when I was looking at it. And so, but I think this is the guy that would be number one. Mansoor would be number one on our list. But guys are transferring out. Maryland lost a lot of guys in the portal at that secondary spot, and we weren't even that good there. So it's a little bit scary because right now the room's kind of empty. You have kind of some young guys like Braden Lee and Kevin Humes that you feel good about. But I want to add someone more experienced. I want to add someone that's been a good player at Virginia Tech, that's been a high level player, to add to that room. Perry Fisher, who started a lot of the year, is entered the portal, as well as just our secondary overall. Brandon Jacobs entered the portal. Glendon Miller is gone. Dante Trader is gone now as well. And so and then there's also guys like Kevin Thomas that are gone, Leonel Whitaker that are gone. There's a lot of guys that are expected to make an impact next year that are gone. And so I think it's an absolute need. I think it was a need no matter if everybody left or nobody left. And I think Mansoor is a perfect kind of guy to fit into a Maryland team. And then we can't forget one of the biggest reasons why Maryland's probably a lot of people are like Maryland should go get it. A lot of Maryland fans are looking at him. This kid's a DMV kid. Him and his brother are DMV kids. He went to Spalding, close to the University of Maryland. That's a school that Malik Washington went to. So we'll see if Malik Washington and Jaden Ships are two Spalding commits, start to talk to him, start to try and get him here, because I think he really works. Because I think he's a really good player. I think he could be a really high level Big Ten player and fill one of the needs we need at outside corner. And I feel a lot better about a corner position because then we can have a guy like Mansoor come in who's experienced, that has played at Virginia Tech, that has done some good things at Virginia Tech the last couple of years, freshman All-American, all those different things, while also bringing up some of the other talent like Braden Lee and Kevin Humes and some of those different guys. And I think that's going to work a lot better than some of the other options that we've started to offer that we'll talk about more. But we've offered this kid Robert Stafford, who went to Miami, who has 3 years left of eligibility. We offered this kid Jacoby Henderson, who was an all Sun Belt player. There's a couple other guys that we've offered. So we're clearly really in on we need corners. It looks like corners and secondaries, along with the offensive line, is the biggest things Maryland football and Mike Locksley are looking to add. And I just think Delane is a really good fit and someone that Maryland football absolutely needs to go after. He kind of fits everything we want. One thing is he's a DMV kid, which is absolutely someone that we want. We really like adding those types of guys, as well as he's talented, freshman All-American, had 4 picks last year. He's done some really good things, and it sounds like he's a solid kid as well. And so I don't know if he wants to make a jump up from Virginia Tech in terms of going to a place like Ohio State, or if he's just looking for somewhere new. But I do think he's a guy that Maryland football should absolutely go after really hard. Maryland football schedule next year. Let's talk about it. Have you ever wanted to go to a game at the last minute like a Maryland Terrapins game, but finding tickets is hard? I have been there before. Buying tickets to your favorite event shouldn't be stressful. Gametime is the fast and easy way to buy tickets for all the sports, music, comedy, and theater near you. With killer deals on last-minute tickets and their best price guaranteed, you can stop stressing over the tickets and start getting hyped for the fun you'll have. Gametime has deals on the tickets right up to the start of an event and even an hour after it starts. It's a place to find last-minute seats and take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off. Download the Gametime app today. Last-minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Maryland's schedule for next year is exactly what the Terrapins need. I don't know how else to say this, but this is the easy Big Ten schedule that Maryland lucked into for next year. Like, there's no team that I would say, oh, based on kind of how teams performed this year, obviously a lot of things change going into next year, but there's not a ton of blue bloods. There's not a ton of Ohio States and Penn States on the schedule. The biggest team I would say that's closest to that, and Michigan is a blue blood, but obviously they had a down year this year despite beating Ohio State. That was absolutely a crazy game with that fight at the end and all those different things. That's the coolest rivalry in sports. But still, Michigan's definitely wasn't anything crazy this year. What were they, like 7-5? So I do think that the Maryland 2025 schedule is very favorable, and I think that is huge for a couple different reasons for Maryland football. One, we just need to get back on track. Last year's team going 4-8, that's not what we want to do. That's absolutely not where we want to be. Winning one Big Ten game is just not good enough. Mike Locksley will tell you that. Anybody will tell you that. That was an absolute backwards year where we've been going up, up, up every single year, and then that was a year where we just started going down. And winning one Big Ten game isn't acceptable, and it just can't happen. And if that happens again, Mike Locksley very well could be done as the Maryland head coach. And with this schedule, that shouldn't happen. You have I'm looking at schedule, every single game I would say is winnable. Like maybe Michigan's really good next year with the Bryce Underwood kid. Maybe they end up being a really good team. But I really believe that I think every single team that we play next year is winnable based on kind of how they did this year, based on their program overall, and kind of what we know and what to expect from these different teams. I don't see a non-winnable Big Ten game. I'm not saying we're going to go undefeated, but if Mike Locksley is able to put together the type of team that through the portal that can be a solid Big Ten team and get guys like maybe a Mansoor, Delane that I just talked about, or get some of these highly talented types of kids, then I think we're going to be in a good spot to be able to do some stuff in the Big Ten potentially this year. Look at the schedule. If you guys want to actually go game through game, let me show you guys what I mean. The first game, a couple of our non-conference games are the first 3 games. We play FAU I think that's a game that Maryland absolutely should win on August 30th. There's not much else to say about that. And we play Northern Illinois, which is kind of funny because I don't know if you guys remember, but this year they actually beat Notre Dame. Notre Dame's lone loss on the season was to this NIU team. Horrible loss. I don't know how you lose to that team, but that's a team that Maryland shouldn't end up losing to. They should not end up losing to an NIU team. I don't think they're that good. And we play Towson next. That's our out of conference teams. So we don't play some really high end out of conference schedule. Like we don't even play a team as good as like Virginia. Like Virginia was pretty good last year. We don't have a solid out of conference game like that. So you should go 3-0 out of conference, but then get to the Big Ten play, and it doesn't look that bad. You play Wisconsin as your first Big Ten game in Madison. I think that's a tough one to win, but it's absolutely winnable. I think they're been decent team. I don't think they're amazing. I think that's a very winnable game. And then you play Washington the next week. Same thing with Washington. You get them at College Park. I think that's a game that you look at that Maryland could absolutely win, depending on how, again, Mike Locksley puts together the team. And then you get Nebraska, another winnable game. Dylan Raiola year 2 might be more scary, but you get them at home. UCLA, they improved this year throughout the season, but I don't think they're that amazing or anything scary, a team that we can't beat. Then you play Indiana. Indiana's due for some regression next year. I almost guarantee it. I think they're good, but if they're a top team you're going to play next year, then you're in a good spot. Like, let's not forget, it's one of the best conferences in the Big Ten, or excuse me, one of the best conferences in the country. The Big Ten is one of the best conferences in the country. So Indiana, I don't think that's something you die about if that's your hardest or second hardest game. And then you play Rutgers in New Jersey. That's really, I don't think that tough of a Big Ten game. And then you get Illinois, same exact thing. And then you get Michigan and Michigan State to end the year, which is kind of funny that you get those two together. So do you guys know what I mean? It's really not like this is a light schedule for Maryland to get. And I think it's exactly what the Terps need, because after last year, we didn't need a gauntlet. We didn't need Penn State and then Ohio State and then Oregon. We didn't need that type of game. And it feels like the last couple of years, we've always faced at least 3 teams that have really good programs. Whereas this year, we don't have that. We don't have 3 blue bloods on the team. I'm sure Michigan will have a good team. I'm sure some of these teams will end up being decent teams, but it's not a bunch of top 5. It's not like 3 top 10 teams on the schedule like it was this year. Like this year, what? We had to play Penn State. They're a top 10 team in the college football playoff. We had to play Oregon. They're top 10 team. They're a good team. We had to play some other talented teams as well. We played Indiana. People forget they're in the college football playoff. What are they? The 10th ranked team in the country. Whereas this year, I think it's important, especially I think this is a year where you can throw Malik Washington in there, because you're not going to play Ohio State and Columbus, where they're going to have the best pass rush in the league, or you're not going to play Penn State at Penn State. It's going to be a crazy atmosphere for a freshman. Like, you're playing pretty low key Big Ten teams. And I don't want to diss these programs, because certainly we don't have any spot to talk, but it's definitely not something that I'm going to be really scared about. And I think it's perfect with the young team that we're going to have next year and maybe the inexperience. I think this is the type of team we need to play. And I think it kind of works. So we'll see what happens exactly. That's way ahead of us. We just finished this year. There's still a lot to go this year for other teams, but I do think it's interesting. Maryland basketball is the biggest weakness. I'll tell you about that. Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. Because right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sports apps gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get the hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-plays, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. There's so many different things to bet on right now. There's Thursday night football, the 49ers versus the Rams, if you want to bet on that tonight. There's college basketball. There's college football playoffs coming up on the 20th and the 21st. So never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. So I think Maryland basketball has a really good team, and I really like the team we have this year. And we're currently on, I guess, a mini bye. I don't know exactly what you call it, but we didn't play at all this week, which kind of stunk. I love this team. I like watching them play. It's nice having a game or two, but it allowed me to talk about some of this recruiting stuff and us at Maryland football. We're landing 5-star Zion Lee, and can we get the Manual 5-star offensive tackle, and some of these different things. And of course, Mansoor Delane today. But we don't play again until Tuesday. We don't play this weekend, and then we play again on Saturday against Syracuse. But I think that this team is really good and doesn't have nearly the weaknesses that we had last year. And it is getting a little bit less like clear. If it's not like, oh, like that's clearly a weakness anymore. Like that's not what it is. But I do think we have a weakness or two that is starting to kind of hurt us. When I look at some other teams and what they have, I think our bench, I want to say it's good and I want to say it's talented, but I'm not convinced about our bench. I'm not convinced about guys coming off the bench. I just don't know if it's quite as good as it needs to be. I think guys need to step up a little bit. My main concern is scoring off the bench. When we sit down Rodney Rice, when we sit down Jacoby Gillespie, when we sit down Derek Queen and Julian Reese, and whatever the case may be, is I don't feel anybody that comes off the bench can go is like a scorer. And like I feel like other teams I think about that are just college basketball programs that are good teams, when I watch them, they have one or two guys off the bench that are really good scorers that can easily be in the starting lineup, that can easily can shoot the ball at a really high level, can do some things at a really high level, can drive, shot create off the bench at a really high level. And I don't think Maryland really necessarily has that coming off the bench. And I think it's tough sometimes because I think sometimes our bench is going to play at a really high level. And I think other times it can kind of not disappoint, but it's just not going to produce very much. And I think that's what we saw in our last game against Purdue. We saw a bench that just didn't give us a lot. It gave us 3 points in general, and I feel like you definitely want a little bit more of that, a little bit more from your bench. Like everybody in our starting lineup did pretty well, besides Julian Reese was in foul trouble, and we needed someone to pick up the slack, and just nobody could really do it off our bench, which definitely hurts. And when I look at it, I think, okay, Deshaun Harris-Smith was a starter last year. He needs to be more assertive. And I know he's not the best shooter in the world, but he's our best guard coming off the bench right now. And I just think he needs to be able to be a little more assertive in the offense when he's in there, because we're going to need him to be when Rodney or Gillespie or Miguel comes out. He's going to have to be the next guy. And he's good. He plays good defense. He's tough, but we just need a little bit more from him scoring the ball. And I don't know if he can deliver that. That's the thing that's kind of scary about the bench. I think Tafara Gapari has been a really good player off the bench for us, and he's probably our best guy off the bench. But he's a little bit scary because I don't know if he can keep up how he's been. He's a really good athlete, and he's been doing some really good things, and he shot the 3-ball well at times. But is he due for some regression? He only had 2 points against Purdue. We need him to be like how he's been. Like there's been games where he's been in double digits. We need him to be like that, and we need Jalen Young maybe to give us a little bit more shooting, a little bit more scoring off the bench as well. I just think that it's our biggest weakness right now because I don't think we have any clear offense coming off the bench. And you'll usually always have Queen or Julian Reese in the game at all times, and you'll usually have Gillespie, Rodney Rice, Celta Miguel, 2 of those 3 probably in at the same time. But I just think when it comes down to when we get later on in the year, March Madness, sometimes you need an X factor, a moment from an X factor, big shot, come off the bench, a guy that people don't expect. And I don't know if we have that. And that's the one thing that kind of scares me about this team is I don't know if there's a lot of bench scoring and if there's a lot of guys that come off the bench that can really help us. I think there's talent, but I just don't know if there's a ton. I think Jordan Geronimo coming back, I still don't know if he fits in our rotation with as well as Tafari Gapari's been playing. I don't know if it even makes sense to play him. So I think there's some good athleticism. I think there's some raw talent, but can we get a guy that can really come off the bench and play well? Maybe Malachi Palmer can be that guy, the freshman, offer some shooting. But I just think I don't love the bench right now, and I think that's our biggest weakness, and that can be something that can hold us back. That's all we have for today. Thank you for listening to Locked on Terps. Make sure you like and subscribe. We're here every day talking Maryland football and basketball, so thank you for listening to Locked on Terps.